Hey, all right.
How you doing?
I am well. How are you?
Good, good.
Oh, man, it's been some time.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Well,
3 weeks.
yeah. That's quite a bit.
I think they're ready for this.
Welcome to The Harvest, where we discuss everything cinema and story. And as we learn, you learn. As we grow, you grow. Yes, episode 26. We were on a little bit of a hiatus there from episode 25. We had a good episode 25. It was different.
Yep.
We did a Q&A, which was awesome.
Nice little milestone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
what people had to say, and they enjoyed it.
Yeah, they had a lot to say, which is great. And I want to encourage you to continue to write in and with any questions, whether you're writing to MountHarvest@gmail.com or info@MountHarvest.com. Both of those will go directly to the moderators and to us. And we'll be able to take those questions and answer them either in an episode or even just directly in case you have a genuine desire or a request or question about filmmaking, cinema, acting, directing, post-production.
Yeah.
But 3 weeks and here we are.
Yeah. Almost feels like season 2.
How did you? Yeah, it does. How did you spend your 3 weeks?
Like everyone else at home, No, we've been coming, and been in our cave editing.
In our post-production cave.
Yeah. Editing and doing a lot of post-production work and
so we just finished a documentary called The Great Suppression. Now, here we are, Thursday, October 1st. It actually premieres the 2nd. So by the time that you all listen or watch on YouTube this episode, the premiere would have been in the past. But for us right now, it's in the future. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to hold off on talking about it until some sort of future episode, whether it's the next or the one after that. Because this week, we're going to be discussing acting.
Yes.
Acting. Yes. And this might be a 2-parter, potentially a 3. It depends on how today's conversation goes, but there's a lot for us to get into.
Yeah, I think it's been a hot topic. I think people have been wanting to hear what we have to say about acting and our experiences and, what we think. And, I think people are ready for this one.
So, acting and actors.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we are not necessarily we're... I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not necessarily actors, but that's not true, is it? That is not true. There's a little bit of history of acting here at the Harvest Podcast. You personally, your acting goes all the way back to the exchange, to dawn of a new era.
Oh, man. So
if you can even consider that acting. Can you talk to us a little bit about your history with acting on stage and on film?
Sure. When Xavier and I were kids, we've mentioned it on past episodes. We love to make movies, and a lot of times when your friends would come over and have the camera and do the thing, you'd always want me to do a performance or some sort of thing in front of the camera. And I think that I developed a passion in that way that grew over the time, but as a whole, I love the whole industry in itself, the whole medium of storytelling. But yes, I did dabble with it. I don't want to talk about the movies we did when we were kids, because that's in past episodes. But there's been some stuff that we've done. The Exchange.
Well, so let's start there, because The Exchange, we did a ton of stuff that was like, school projects.
Yeah.
And we were doing films specifically for projects. So, like, the teacher would say, here's the topic, create a poster board, and we're like, no, we're going to make a movie, right? Yeah. And that's been going all the way back since elementary school, middle school, high school especially. But it wasn't until The Exchange that we made something that was not just a project. It wasn't just, that's just, like an assignment that we need to do. It was like, okay, no, let's make something that we're passionate about, and let's go above and beyond just the assignment to make a movie. And The Exchange was the one.
Yeah, I think that whenever we did things for school, the only thing that we ever went, I feel, above and beyond when it comes to work or homework or a school class was always filming.
Yeah.
And in The Exchange, we decided to really go deep in the story.
Yeah.
We wanted to, get the moods behind the characters, why they were doing what they were doing, and it was great. It was such a great experience because it wasn't just the storyline. It could have continued.
Yeah.
It could have been a show that could have continued on. And,
absolutely. I mean, we made so many mistakes. You remember?
Yeah.
We had duffel bags full of guns. Okay, like toy guns. Now, for those of you that don't know, like in the 2020s today, if you go to Toys R Us and you buy a toy gun, like you can tell it's a toy.
Yeah.
But like when we were growing up as kids and you would buy toy guns, like those looked like real guns.
Yeah.
Like I think it's because of like our generation that guns now have orange tips. Okay.
Well, we had the right idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We didn't want props. We wanted things that looked real.
Right. And we didn't have a prop department. It was just us, acting, filming, directing, setting up the props, like costumes and everything. And, here we are, juniors and seniors in high school, and we were filming in a location. We were in a
big
parking
garage.
lot, just a garage, right? And we didn't get licenses or permits. It's a guerrilla style, just get in there and film. I think someone had called the police. Like, there's these kids, there's these brown kids running around with guns in my neighborhood.
in a suburb.
Yeah.
A white suburb.
Yeah, and then, and we ran when we saw, like police coming. We got out of there. We emptied that place and space out, and we left duffel bags full of guns.
The funny thing is, it was a movie about an exchange, an illegal transferring of goods with guns that went bad, and the duffel bag was tossed over the edge because someone got shot, and people are probably looking at this like, what is going on over
Neighbors
there?
are looking like, what's going on? Kids are getting shot.
It must have been a phenomenal performance because the police came and we were in trouble. Yeah, I got shot and the duffel bag went out. Yeah. It's like, what would happen if you like fell off the ledge? I'm like, no, I'm not going that far. But
like the third
we
story
throw
drop.
right, exactly. So we threw the bag, and then the cops took the guns.
Yeah, and so this got confiscated, and there was a search, and it made the news, and these duffel bag full of guns was found.
We learned to get warrants and to get licenses for places,
and permits. Yeah.
Sorry,
we learned that the hard way.
Yeah. At a very young age.
All of us could have been arrested as a result. of that. We all ran. We were kids, but that was.
I mean, if that was done today, it probably would have taken to another level.
Who knows what would have happened today?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I think because things are so heightened, it's it would seem worse today, but shouldn't it be better? Right?
You would think,
right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to go on that topic. I want to stay on the exchange.
Acting. So that was so you got shot there.
Yeah.
You were a young, kind of nervous, bystander.
Yeah.
You were kind of apprehensive about the whole thing, and you kind of got caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever
I didn't have any lines.
No, but I feel like whenever there's a stunt,
I wasn't promoted
you were a stunt man. You know, like whenever there's a stunt, we're like
whatever was epic. I was like, give it to Jonathan, because I remember in what was the other one?
Yellow Streak?
No, the
Donovan New Era.
Donovan New Era.
Yeah.
Donovan New Era. We used to do karate, and I had this cool move that was recorded, and we did it in slow motion. And we put it back in. We filmed it in like
it was
we had one camera,
wall.
but somehow we we made it look like we had like 6 angles of it. And it was basically I was fighting a friend of ours, and I went at him, and he tried to like push me, and I ran up the tree and did a flip.
Yeah.
That was a cool move.
You flipped over his shoulder.
And we were like, bam, we would put it up again. We edited it. Do it again.
Yeah.
And
so it was like 6 shots, 6 angles of you running up and landing.
So it was the idea of my style then was this just abrasive, very outlandish,
but a stunt actor, I guess, in a way,
performance.
Yeah, kind of like a Tom Cruise. Like it's about the spectacle.
The spectacle.
You were a stunt actor at the time because you kind of felt default to that position.
And at a young age, I learned about breaking that internal ice, and this is what I kind of and it builds on from there. But at a young age, doing this stuff, it helped me understand that we naturally have this wall that we don't break because an image that we want to show the world of ourselves.
This is good.
And when you do acting, you challenge that wall to go outside of your norm, to be able to do things that you don't naturally do. and you're able to reflect on the fact that, hey, you know, I don't have to be stuck on this image that I've created of myself. The idea of expressing and breaking that wall allows you to create and develop new ways to communicate and to express yourself.
That's one of the hardest things. I feel like that's key for an actor right there, to understand that element and aspect of themselves.
I think that's the foundation. I think that's really the beginning,
the base.
As a new beginner, knowing, hey, you're always composing yourself. If you notice,
you
have different friends
and
you act differently to those friends.
Yeah.
And you realize, why do I act differently to those friends?
Yeah.
Because I have an image I'm trying to portray to them.
Having a self-awareness about that image, about that mask that you wear, and knowing when to change it, how to change it, when to just take it off.
When to take it off and be able to, and be vulnerable. Yeah. Perfect word.
Wow. So the exchange taught you that. Pretty cool. So now we move on, right? And we're on the stage, and I want to highlight a specific performance, because for me, as far as on stage, this is one of my most memorable performances, not just that you've done, but like in theater. And I'm sorry, like I have seen a lot of great theater, and I have seen a lot of great actors on the stage. But I always go back to the play that we wrote together, Color of St. Auburn, and I go back to the character that you portrayed of Mr. Lamenti, and that was kind of like the one time where you finally were outside of, okay, you're no longer just the stunt performer, character performer, but you did a real deep character study. Yeah. And you gave a really in-depth and very emotional performance as Mr. Lamenti in The Color of St. Auburn.
Yeah, that was the first time that I did that. That was the first time that I did a character study, and I read on the character's description that was given, that we wrote down and that you had suggested. But a real actor or a person who really wants to take this role will go out and add to it and think of, well, how did he get there? And you have hundreds of questions you need to ask yourself so that you can fully grasp the knowledge of this person. Yeah. That was the first time I did that. Yeah. And it was amazing because I was able to do things that came from the experiences of the person's life that I had knowledge of. It was stored in my brain as you would do things that have been stored in your brain over time. Yeah. And so that character, the study that I did allowed me to naturally do things that just came from the knowledge that was brought, that I poured into myself. And that was the first time that I was able to kind of be the actor more so than try to act and think of what is expected of the role.
Yeah, you were there. You were in the moment, and you were that person. Yeah. And I mean, I remember, I think the biggest reaction that I remember is talking to our dad, and him forgetting that he was watching his son on stage, and fully being engrossed by the performance, and himself being like bawling his eyes out in tears for the life of the person that he was seeing on stage. And sometimes, you know the saying, a prophet is without honor in his own home, right? It's like, I feel like that even also carries over into acting, because someone knows you so well.
I know that
it's like, I know that person on stage, it's like, I know they're acting. But when it comes down to, someone that knows you, that knows who you are, and themselves being able to then be lost and and emotionally be moved in that way. I just when we talked to my dad and he made that confession, I was just like, yeah, I felt that too, and that brought you into a different depth of acting, which you've already explained, right?
I mean, if as an actor you watch the individual, I mean, think about the roles of like Leonardo, who has hundreds of movies he's done, but then you think of certain actors where you're like, oh, that's this person. That's the way he acts, and that's how he is in every movie. When you can see an actor that you don't recognize he's that actor, but he's that individual role of that particular movie, it's like you know that's talent. Yeah, that's talent. There's talent there. Yeah. I mean, I'm very hard on myself, I wouldn't personally say, I'm good or I'm great. Right. But I think that there's something there that people are able to enjoy the story, the theater play, or the movie, and be like, wow, I was able to get engrossed and lose focus.
And it's interesting because you bring that knowledge and that understanding to your work as a DP.
Right, yeah.
And you're framing, you're choosing lenses, you're lighting based on the knowledge of that you have as an actor. And, you know, and you're the closest person to the energy that's happening between actors when they're performing and they're creating. And because you understand what's happening there, you know, you're able to enter and come out of it seamlessly, you know, and capture and pull from that, you know, precisely what the audience needs to see, and not just what, but how they need to see it.
Right.
And it's amazing to be able to have a DP that has that kind of knowledge, you know, of like what's happening before their very eyes. The DP isn't there just framing a beautiful shot, but they're framing a beautiful performance, and they are understanding that.
Yeah. I mean, an actor's so lost in the role that when I'm behind the camera, I'm trying to have the camera communicate with the viewer and the actor.
Yeah, of course.
I'm that bridge that allows them to say, hey, you know, I bring in certain lights, movements that emphasize this connection, you know, between the actor, to give the actor the ability to, you know, really show that performance on film.
Now, let's fast forward.
Yeah.
And now we're going to take what you were doing on stage onto on camera, and then your first on camera role was as a rookie police officer in A Blood Throne.
Yeah.
If you could talk just a little bit about your experience with creating the character of not Sergeant High, Detective Martinez.
Well, everyone knows, you know, theater, you know, having a camera in front of your face is very different than being on stage.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, that performance needs to be noticeable, and but I personally, I never really, my passion was in the movies, because as you know, we've been doing that since we were kids, and so I always wanted my expression to be within a frame.
Yeah.
I feel
Smaller.
it inside of a frame more so than in a stage where it's more...
It has to be bigger. It has to reach that back row.
Exactly. So I actually was excited to, you know, have that subtlety in my performance, but the subtleties being very expressive.
Yeah.
And I learned in Martinez that it was awesome to be self-aware. I think I developed in that film this self-awareness of expression. Here's a great example. Have you ever been in a moment, in a heated conversation with somebody, in an open place where there's a lot of people watching, and you start yelling, and then the argument ends, and then you realize where you are? That moment right there is a moment of a lack of self-awareness, right? Because you have given yourself all attention on the feeling that you had to express yourself. If you're able to get in this heated conversation where you're looking around and you're not going into it because of what you're seeing, that's a moment of self-awareness. That's what I mean by self-aware.
Or like awareness of the environment. Right,
exactly.
Right.
And you're self-aware of your face, you're self-aware of your expression, there's a control of your body and your mood.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by self-aware. Now, I'm not saying one or the other is a better actor, but what I'm saying is because the person who's so self-engrossed in their expression also could potentially be a good actor and give a great performance because they're so engrossed in that one-to-one communication with the individual. But at the same time, the person who's very self-aware knows the movements that he's doing and speaking, and he knows what he's hearing, and he's understanding his body movements, and he's able to do and give a performance that he's fully aware of.
Yeah, and let's take that a little bit deeper, because that's also the performer that understands filmmaking, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about this later, but like acting for the cut, you know, like acting so you act for the director, but then acting for the editor, you know, and understanding that you're making a movie. And so you have the self-awareness of also like how you're moving in a space because a movie's being made. Now, that's not something that I would advise an actor to be conscious of while they're acting, but that's something that is so rehearsed that, you know, as over the course of having done many films and many roles, like it becomes muscle memory.
Right.
And so you are now understanding, like, for example, on a stage, just on a stage in general, this is a really good example. On a stage, you know, you can't have your back to the audience, right? You can't do backting. I don't care how nice your back looks. Like, you can't do backting because the audience needs to see your face. You know, like if you're not in the light, then you're not performing, right? With theater. And, you know, like blocking and hitting marks and that kind of stuff, like that self-awareness. And so having that soft focus, I've worked with actors that are so in themselves and in the moment and aren't necessarily, like, they're great about being in the moment, but haven't done it enough to know there's still a box.
Yes.
There's a box that you can't just float out of,
right?
You know, and you have to understand those parameters and be creative within them, you know, and sometimes it's like, okay, there's a balance.
Yeah, there's a dual performance. There's the conscious and the subconscious. They both have to be performing.
Yeah.
And the subconscious has to be self-aware of the blocking, of the movement, of the camera, of the lighting, of the environment, all these different things. And the conscious have to be aware of the performance. It has to be fully engrossed on the individual and what he is feeling, all the moods, hearing, all the senses need to be expressed.
Beautiful. And that came as a result of a blood throne.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, was there anything that you specifically, you know, because you're no longer, that's not what you're doing.
No.
So was there anything?
I get asked, but it's not something I'm like, put me in that role.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I'm, you know, acting with like Jim Caviezel or something.
Then at that point,
I'm
you're
in.
like, all right,
Yeah. Right.
You're at that level now.
No, absolutely not. But I'm saying, I would not be performing. I'd just be like, all right, Jim, do your thing. I'd just be standing there.
I'll just smile.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as myself, now my personal connection to acting, I'm gonna make a little confession that I don't know a lot of people know, and I actually have I have a degree in theater, but it's not just theater. It's a degree in theater and dance.
Yes, you do. Dance, I love it.
I have a degree in dance. Not many people know that, but it's a part of, you know, just my study. Actually, as a matter of fact, when while I was in college, I was trying to put together a film major, and I was using theater, I was using literature, I was using, you know, writing courses in class, and I was working with my advisor to try and put together a film major. And unfortunately, I don't know, maybe I just wasn't mature enough at the time to be able to balance, you know, life as a full-time student, but then also like a full-time athlete, you know, then college life, and all that just kind of got in the way. And this film major that I was working towards, trying to put together with different classes, because they don't offer a film major, ended up becoming a theater and dance minor.
But you'd be surprised, a lot of acting is a dance. And you have to recognize the blocking, what we're talking about, the movement of the camera and the actors flowing in the scene. I mean, in the Blood Throne, if you've seen it, a great scene in Herod's chamber while he's in the pool, the camera's traveling around and everyone's doing their own thing. It feels like a big dance. Blocking that around was brilliant to be able to get the expression of everyone in the room. And it was just one camera that really only fit in that scene.
Yeah. The dance did help develop things like tempo. You know, because film is all about tempo.
It's a choreography.
You know, like, it is a choreography, exactly, movement, and just how to kind of maneuver within a space in order to.
So you didn't waste your money.
All right.
You didn't waste your money.
Okay, because I'm still paying for that dance minor. Anyway, but as a result of, you know, having being involved in theater in college, I actually had a very unique experience. Now, some of my favorite classes were actually improv. I loved improv. For some reason, I loved the spontaneity of comedic moments and just being able to influence moments, you know, spontaneously in improv exercises and things like that. And so I was kind of like the clown in my theater classes, and I was really lively and, you know, just.
You were the guy that always brought the gun?
Yeah. In every skit, I always pulled out the gun. No, I'm not that guy. But I did pull out the gun a couple of times, and it saved me in some improv exercises. No, but like I always brought a lot of energy to it, and as a result, when an adjunct professor had come, visiting professor had come and brought the play Marisol to our school, I auditioned for Marisol. Now, Marisol is actually written by Jose Alvarez, I think. Jose Rivera, who's a Puerto Rican playwright, the first Puerto Rican writer to win an Oscar or be nominated for an Oscar for writing. But anyway, he writes this play called Marisol. And Marisol, I'll give you just a brief synopsis. It's about, a Puerto Rican girl who lives in the Bronx. She's working really hard, or in New York City, she's working really hard to kind of make it up to like that middle upper class, and she finally does, but yet she still lives in this dangerous neighborhood in the Bronx where she grew up. And she gets assaulted one day, and but she gets rescued by her guardian angel. And the guardian angel says to her, this is it. I'm done rescuing you. I can't protect you anymore. I got to go because I got to fight this war because, God is getting, growing really old and senile, and he's taking the world, with him, and we got to stop him. It's a really weird play, but borderline blasphemous. But nevertheless,
right. No, I know. Yeah.
It was actually really cool. Yeah. And I auditioned for this piece. I auditioned for it. I'm like, okay, I'm Latino. And the play is written by a Puerto Rican. I'm a Puerto Rican, and I wanted the role of the lead angel, and I got it. That line in Batman where Heath Ledger says, I'm like a lost puppy chasing around cars. If I ever were to catch one, I wouldn't know what to do with it. And that's what I was. I was like a lost puppy chasing around cars. I caught a role and I didn't know what to do with it. And I remember till this day that I feel like, when you finally get on stage and you're like a deer before headlights, and that can happen to you like on a single performance. I feel like that happened to me for the entire run of the show. I caught the role and I was like a deer before headlights, and everything that I was cast for, like my spontaneity, my fun-lovingness, my energy was gone. And I turned into a robot. And I turned it super serious. And I became this like stoic angel that the director was like, it's too late. We can't recast it. What happened to Xavier,
Man, yeah.
And I don't know what happened, but I carried that with me. I feel like that's still like, the monkey on my shoulder, like the chip on my shoulder. I carry that, and ever since then, I've always been. I think as far as like performance, I've always been first and foremost very empathetic and sympathetic to the actor and to the process that they go through, and I've always been very empathetic and sympathetic toward pulling from them what I know is in them, because it wasn't done for me. Right. It was it's like eventually he'll get it. I guess. Yeah. And so. I don't know. Till this day, I kind of like, I wish I could go back, and fix that. But no, I think because I didn't, and I had that experience, and later I haven't even watched it. I haven't even gone back to watch it because I know that what I'm going to see up there.
Maybe that's your healing.
And apparently it did well. Oh, yeah. Maybe. But apparently the show did really well. Yeah. It did really well, and it's in the archive somewhere. I'll have to go back and watch it. But nevertheless, I've got photos. maybe I'll put one up in the show notes. Yeah. I'll put one up. Seen him. But anyway, after that, then it was The Color of St. Auburn. Now, my acting experiences from my writing haven't been like, I'm writing so that I can act in this. I think they've almost happened by default and circumstances. Like we went to cast and we didn't get enough people. Yeah. And so, working in community theater, working with, church community theater, and then moving on, like doing Cast of Faith, or doing our own shows, our own performances. It's all, it's really small, it's quaint. And therefore, you're not necessarily exposed to a plethora of great actors. When you cast these things and audition them, you get what you get. And if you can't fill it, then you do it yourself. And I ended up being in a position to act in a role as Captain Summers in Color of St. Auburn. I think what I got really excited about was having the opportunity to work with Thomas Grauer, whom, for those of you that follow our films, he was the lead in Underground. And that was just awesome, being able to act with an actor who's actually listening. You can feel that he's listening to you, and he's like pulling not just the line from you, but the feeling and the emotion that comes with that line, because they're listening. And that's like the one thing that I learned as a result of, acting across an amazing actor, that when you are a giving actor, when you are a generous actor, you're going to get great performances from your scene partner.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you've got these actors that they come in to do their thing, you know, and they're great, but they do their thing, and then they're in their trailer, you know, and they're gone, or they're in their hotel room, they're gone, you know. But like those generous actors that are like, I'm here for the process, I'm here for the journey, I'm here for the scene, and I'm here to give to you of myself. And even if it's like a coverage shot and it's not of them, and you could use anybody, you can use a stand-in for their back. They, you know, like Tommy's the type of person that's like, no, I want to be there, and I want to pull out of you a great performance, because it's gonna pull great performance from me, and we'll have this synergy.
Yeah, and actors will feel that stuff.
Yeah.
They'll know when two people are literally listening and having conversation, because they'll know, they'll say, I wasn't getting anything from the other person, and it was hard for me to give because I wasn't getting.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a real synergy between actors for one to even have a great performance.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I learned from that experience. Like, you know about this stuff, you know, you read about it as you study and you learn your craft, you know, and going to school for it and whatnot. You know, you learn about these elements about acting, and then as a director to understand what's happening between two actors. But it's one thing reading it in a book, and then it's another thing when I could feel it being pulled out of me.
Yeah.
It was like my emotions were being sucked out of me,
Yeah.
and I could feel it, and I could see his face changing with my words, and that felt awesome. And I know that the performance was all the better for it. And now I'm looking for that as a director between two, and and that's kind of what I try to develop as far as the relationship between actors on set, you know, or between characters even. So, having said that, let's kind of move forward then to talk a little bit about what separates good actors from great actors. Because that's kind of a big question, and it depends on who you ask, right? Because if you're talking to directors and you ask a director, well, you tell me what separates a good actor from a good actor from a great actor. Every single person is going to give you a different answer, right?
Yeah.
So you've got for example, directors like David Mamet, right? David Mamet is, he's American Buffalo. He's written, Glenn Ross, Glenn Ross, Ronin, Hannibal. I mean, he's written some pretty great things.
Yeah,
but he's
Ronin,
he's a great playwright, but he's also a great screenwriter, and he's a director, and he's acted as well. You know, his mentality as far as his dealing and his work with his actors is like, actors are a tool. Actors are a tool, and they're there in order to help you create the goal, which is the story. So, for example, if you're building a house, if the goal is to build the house so that you can live in this home, the actor is your hammer in order to put in those nails that are super essential for the structural support of this home, of this house. But you're not going to then sit there and stare and live in the hammer. No, the hammer is just a tool. You're going to build a house so that the journey turns that house into a home, and that's the experience that you have, the living inside of this home. It's just a tool. Or you've got like Hitchcock, for example, who's famous for quoting and saying, you know, actors are cattle, you know, like, and that's an extreme, you know, where there are oftentimes even contentious relationships, you know, between actors and directors on set, because it's like you're here because I could replace you with anyone. I could put a monkey in there to do your job as long as they can read the lines and memorize it. You know, it's like not really to that extreme, but you know what I mean. Or you've got the opposite end of that, where you've got, you know, people like Sidney Lumet, or you've got John Cassavetes, or Martin Scorsese, where you've got these directors that are, I guess, considered actor directors, you know, that terminology, he's an actor director, where they are now, you know, hyper-focused on what the actor brings. These are directors that they consider the actor more so the oil for your engine. Like, you're building an engine, but that engine isn't going to run if you don't have oil in it, right? And the higher the quality of the oil, the higher the quality of how that engine is going to run. You know, you don't just put in, you know, crap synthetic into like a, you know, like your 63 Mustang, you know what I mean? Like, you got to put quality oil to get this quality engine to run at its peak performance, and it's about the oil. You can have this beautiful machinery, but if you don't have quality oil in it, forget it. It's just going to seize up, and it's not going to work. And I mean, there's interesting, I know, like, for example, John Cassavetes is known to being an extreme example of a director's, an actor's director. You know, he's known, for example, like if he's got a great performance and he was able to pull a great performance, but it was completely blurry, he would use that shot in his film. Which to me is wild, you know, because if you watch any of his films, whether you're watching Gloria or Opening Night or Faces, you know, some of his classics, sometimes even if you're a cinephile, it's hard to kind of sit through some of those films because he's completely disregarding story and plot, and it's all just character studies. Actors love acting for him. I mean, he's passed away now, but, you know, like, loved acting for him. But, you know, at the risk of, you know, losing the story. How do you balance that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we first started, I mean, all of our footage was blurry. And it would be like, we don't have a movie, you know? Let's get rid of this thing because we don't have a movie. Yeah. And I can only imagine, you know, his passion for the actor's performance to be the best. It didn't matter anything else, or should I say that was first, is very... It's very interesting to me, you know. But you know, I think that it's important. I personally feel as though actors are almost the oil side of things and the hammer side of things.
It's a balance, right?
There is absolutely there's a balance.
Because I guess the way that you're looking at it is like, oil's super important for the engine, but you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room with the oil that you choose. You know, it's like, well, don't get too high up in your own head because I can switch this up and use someone else.
Yeah, I mean, the talent, I mean, there's so many talented people out there. I mean, there's people that haven't been discovered that are waiting to be discovered. And sometimes it's maybe they're not talented at all. They don't know that they're talented. And it takes, like, for instance, Harrison Ford was a carpenter on set. And he did the performance in, I believe it was Star Wars. No. Star Wars. Maybe it was Star Wars, or was it Indiana Jones? I could be wrong. Or maybe it's Star Wars. People know. I'm sure they all know the story. But people like him, who, you know, it was found inside of him, and it was brilliant.
And he had a little bit of background, and but he was trying to find his way into the industry through carpentry, and then he was like, hey, I'll do this.
And it's just the moment at the right moment at the right time. And so, you know, you asked the question, what makes a good actor
versus a great actor?
Personally, I mean, like you said, there's so many answers to this question. But personally, you don't have to do much to have an excellent performance.
On
subtlety
screen
on screen,
on stage,
on screen. Well, I think that's what we're talking about, right? On screen. Subtleties in a performance are just as powerful as the extravagant or the, you know, epic of whatever scene it is. And for me, if you can express a subtle performance, or if you can say something that is what needs to be said at a very simple and subtle way, and you nail the point of the scene and the story, then that makes an excellent actor. You know what I mean? The actors tell the story, right? Their job is to make sure that the story gets from point A to point Z.
Now, you made a really good point here that I want to highlight before we get away from it. You know, talking about subtleties on the screen versus, you know, like the flamboyant on stage. I think that I personally am of the belief that there's a direct correlation between the greater the screen, the better the actor has to be. Because everything is amplified on IMAX, right? And the human mind is very good at calling melodrama and saying, that's melodramatic. You know, like, oh, that's over the top. That's, you know, that's just like acting of the 1800s, you know, like the stage, you know, melodrama. And the better the actor, right, is, the better they're able to in the little, in the still and in the small, to bring out the greatness of emotion. You know, what it is that character is experiencing at that moment, with the subtlety of a glance, of a look, even just how their eyes rest. You know, and people don't talk about this that much. It's like just how the eyes are resting at that moment, and how they're communicating a certain emotion. And because they're actually feeling it, they are exuding it, and it is coming out, and letting yourself, you know, fall into that realm, into that space of emotion where, as you're supposed to be feeling something, you are actually feeling it. And therefore, just by the way that the muscles on your face are resting or contracted, or, you know, how you're thinking it and seeing it, and your gaze, like, you're communicating that emotion. And the greater actors are able to tap into that subtle space. And you need that when you're on an IMAX screen, because if you're now throwing your arms up and you're doing this and you're being big because you're just this little person on a stage and you think you got to get it to the back row, like, you're going to lose it, because the human eye is going to be like, that's just a melodramatic mess that, you know, like, what are they doing? And I think that's why in the world of Netflix and streaming, and as the screens are getting smaller and in your hand, you can get away with a lesser quality, right? And I don't want to say lesser quality of an actor, because, like, that's unfair, because you've got great performances in Netflix films, you know, phenomenal performances and great actors doing those performances. But it's just, you know, the smaller the screen, I guess you can get away with a little bit more, as far as the melodramatic is concerned. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that direct correlation. I'm seeing it now. That's why, like, there's just so much content, and people are okay. I feel like people are harsher when they're sitting in the cinema. And I know that there's the whole, well, you've paid more, you've gone out of your way to go to a theater, and you spent like $20 on a Coca-Cola and popcorn, and so you demand something great. But I do believe that despite all of that, I think the audience is more demanding when they are, you know, of the performance and of the acting, when they are sitting in a theater with a giant screen in front of them.
Yeah, you know, yes, I agree. And I think to better describe the acting, to me, there's a meter, right? And let's say there's A, B, C list actors. C actors would probably be around, to reach 100, they probably reach around 75, right? And B actors will probably reach like 80, 85 if they, you know, something happens where they ate their Wheaties or something. I don't know. And then A-list actors are 90. But if you choose the right actor for the right performance, for the right story, that's when they're able to hit 100.
Right. I love that.
And so,
love that.
You could find yourself thinking you're a C or D or, you know, actor, but if you're the perfect role for the perfect story, and you have knowledge,
a D-list actor doing an A-list performance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you don't really know what you are until you find the right role, because you see actors out there, they're picking and choosing their roles because they know that there are certain roles that will take them to the next level, because obviously, you know, they're after the award, or they're after the proof of their talent. And so I think that's kind of where I see it, is you'll know a good actor when you have a good casting director who helps them find that perfect role, or an agent that helps them find that perfect role. So you need to surround yourself with a group of people in the industry that are going to help you find out whether you are going to be an excellent actor.
And I think you nailed it. I think that there's one thing that every director and producer agrees, is that, you know, the battle is nearly over once the film is cast.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've got an amazing casting director that is finding that perfect person for that very specific role, you've now, you know, you can dig into the sea of the myriad, the diaspora of actors, and you can now be pulling A-list performances just out of the vast ocean, you know, and you know, and I don't know how people are defining A-list, B-list, C-list. I don't know if they're defining it, you know, the traditional way as far as the money and box office returns and the money they make and not. We're talking about it as far as like performance levels, right? You know, like an A-list performance, you know, like a Denzel Washington type of performance, a Daniel Day-Lewis type of performance, you know, a Meryl Streep or a Susan Sarandon type of performance type of thing. Those can come from anyone if you've got a great casting director, and I love that point, and you are so right. And I think that's like that's more than half the battle. That's more than half the battle. Now, one thing that I think, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was gonna add to not to that, but add something else. But I wanted you to finish your point. So another thing too that I've noticed, and I know that I'm sure there's probably going to be something that we go into the next episode about. But a lot of people talk about, well, what about Christian movies versus the secular world? What is the disconnect between the acting there? What is going on? Why can't, you know, the performances be as equal? And I know that you and I have had this conversation before. Actually, we bumped into Kevin McCreary at a festival, and we were sitting in the couch, and we were just hashing this out. What is going on? What is the problem? And we realized that there's this world that they lived in. And let's imagine this circle table here being the whole world. You as an actor have to allow yourself to experience and be able to maneuver,
portray, walk
this whole world, walk,
be able to,
And I think that personally, it begins. I mean, there's so many reasons why there's this inability to have great performances like the secular films, but it begins with the fact that the Christian has been stuck in a smaller world.
Yeah, well, okay, so so we're about to break into the spiritual.
That's why
we're gonna get really metaphysical here.
Okay.
So you've got, you know, and depending on who the audience member is, this might be like really tough to understand, or this might be like, yeah, I get it. I don't know. You know, you decide. Nevertheless, looking at this from a faith perspective and from a spiritual perspective, you've got the kingdom, right? And you've got the world. Let's call it Babylon, just so we can give some names.
Yeah.
So you've got Babylon and you've got the kingdom of heaven. As a Christian, you strive to be walking, living, aspiring to being a resident constantly and continuously of the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
And you want your performances to come from that place and that space. And yet, what you're trying to perform are lives, experiences, circumstances, and situations of people that are not living in the kingdom, that are struggling with Babylon issues, emotions, circumstances, and problems, and having been, I guess, living inside this world, this kingdom of heaven world, you know, where you have been, your whole life trying as best as you possibly can to not be associated or connected in any way, shape, or form to this Babylon. When you try to then portray it, it's like there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
And you know, and this is a really difficult topic, and I think we might have to go into
that's what I'm saying. Into the next episode, which is great because I know that the audience wants to understand this and hear this because they're probably trying to prevent, if they want to roll and like, I don't want to be looked at as one of those people who be like, oh yeah, that's faith based, or they give it titles and names that start to water down the importance of the story.
Right.
So
we'll table this.
Yeah,
you know what? If you want to hear about this topic, then you need to tune in to next week's episode number 27, because we're going to go even deeper about the Christian actor versus the secular actor. All right, let's move forward, though.
Let's do it.
All right. So, acting style. So one thing that everybody, any director that you ever ask, any producer that you ever ask, all can agree that despite whether you're the type of director that says actors are they're a hammer, or you're the type of the director where you say an actor is the engine oil, is the everything. The one thing that both of those directors, those types, or those extremes on this, spectrum, all will agree that a prepared actor is the best kind of actor.
Yes.
Preparation is important. It's key. And we talk about this a lot, even as crew members, as writers and directors and DPs. We talk about preparation, the process. Now, no matter this is across the board for every type of actor. All actors just must be prepared. So what does that mean? That means that you need to know the story, have read the script. I don't know. I'm personally bothered by the type of actors that they just read their pages and they bring that, and then that's it. And then that irks me. And I know that we've seen great performances from actors that do that, and I get it. But I guess for me, it's because I'm also oftentimes 9 out of 10 times the writer, and so much work has been poured into the writing, so much that to just see an actor that just read pages, 3, 5, 8, 13, and just found their highlighted lines. I just so much work went into this. Read the whole thing.
Our research and development booklet is 3 to 4 times bigger than the script.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of work has gone into the story, and I don't know. And I know that a lot of directors, obviously they have their hand in the writing process as well, because I'm sure they've done some tweaking in order to turn the film and the story into their style. And so they themselves have poured into the script if they haven't written it. And the one thing that you want is for them to be familiar and be prepared and understand when they're coming professionally what it is that they are going to accomplish that day and how they are going to accomplish it. That's why, I love actors, because they bring things, if they've come prepared, they bring things that you never even thought of if you're the actor and director. They're bringing nuances to the performance. So you're like, that's brilliant, because they've been living in those characters. And they've been preparing themselves to become those characters. That's what you did for Color of St. Auburn. I wrote Mr. Lamenti, and you brought, oh, by the way, Mr. Lamenti has Tourette's. And you brought that, and you explained the history behind it, and you gave me this breakdown. I'm like, yeah. And then we saw it in the performance, and we're like, yeah. Why didn't I know that about the guy that I created? And you're like, well, I've been living him.
Right.
I've been living him, and I came prepared to perform this. And it was an instant, and then that was like the iconic element of who Mr. Lamenti was. And it's because a prepared actor brought this to the table. Now, there's different types of acting techniques or methods, let's call it that. And we're going to talk a little bit about these. And I think this is as far as we're going to get with today.
Yeah.
Acting methods, because people have some misconceptions about acting, right? People think, all sorts of weird things of what makes a good actor. Can you give me some things that you've heard people say what makes a good actor?
I memorized all my lines. I've
got a good memory.
I got a great memory.
I can read a script and act. What else? What else have you heard? You know which one I get a lot?
Which one?
Oh, my life is so dramatic.
Oh yeah,
I've got I'm so so I've got drama in my life.
I can act.
Do drama. I can act.
Right. I mean, there's so many. Gosh, I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head other than those two.
I've seen a lot of movies.
Oh right, yes.
I've seen a lot of movies. Yeah. I can act. It's like, I've watched a lot of TV. I've watched a lot of movies. Like, I can do that, what they're doing on screen.
Yeah, there's so many things that people quickly assume that acting is because I had a camera. I had a camera.
I've done this, in high school.
I have a camera. Right. I mean, today, because the technology has advanced, everyone has a camera. Everyone's on TikTok or everyone's on YouTube and all that stuff, and now they're all actors, or now they know how to do documentaries or real time reality TV shows. Yeah. So, I mean, those are all the quotes and sayings.
Or like, I've gone through that experience.
But when you sit
life,
down and you watch a movie like Lord of the Rings, and you're like, what did I just watch?
Yeah.
How do you do this?
Yeah.
It's a wake-up call to realize that it takes deep education.
Yeah, there's so much more to it than just, I've seen it so I can do it. Yeah. Or I did it once so I could do it. Or, all of those weird,
it takes a consumption of many things for you to develop the art and the ability of acting.
And so it goes all the way back to, classical acting when Konstantin Stanislavski decided, okay, we need to come up with a system, some sort of, not necessarily rules, but some sort of structure behind the art and the craft of acting. And he put it together. Like, the goal was to find some sort of a universal systematic approach that could be applied by every actor. Mm-hmm. Like, come up with, okay, there has to be a way to, come up, put together a list of do's and don'ts type of thing that an actor can follow in order to hone in and develop the craft. And that's what Stanislavski did with his, with classical acting. And it was really a reaction to some of the more commonly used melodramatic and unrealistic, over-the-top theatrical type of acting that existed back in the 19th century and prior to that,
Right.
And the idea was to use your feelings and your experiences in order to connect with the character that you are portraying. Mm-hmm. And so they would really hone in on and concentrate on voice and physical ability, physical skills, emotional memory, things that they're observing in the performance and observation and in the analysis of the dramatic techniques used in the writing, and all of these things were at the time really revolutionary. It's like, study the script, and pull from it emotion, and it's like, what? Like, that's what we're gonna do in order to act, and in classical acting.
I remember that when I went to early on in my school years, that's one of the things that they were teaching us at the time was, well, did you experience something that you can pull out of it and do and take the role? And I experienced so many things that had nothing to do with the particular story, so I wasn't able to really use that technique, but at times you'd be surprised.
Yeah, and the idea was to let the script be what guides you and pull from the writer's words, the fullness of the intent and the emotion. And, you've got Laurence Olivier, you've got Patrick Stewart, Meryl Streep, you've got some great actors that have come out of this Stanislavski approach and technique, and which then turns into the Chekhov acting technique. Michael Chekhov, who was a student of Stanislavski, and I always butcher his name, the Stanislavski. I always butcher it. But the technique, the actor would focus on more internal problems, things that are going on the inside, and problems that are going on, like in the mind of this character, and then you express those issues through the movement. And so it was very psychological study and an in-depth understanding of the mind of a certain, and what the mind experiences in a given situation or circumstance. And you'd use, the term psychophysical was then coined as a result of that, like what the physicality would interpret as a result of the psychoanalysis of the character in any given moment. And so, you've got, Clint Eastwood, Anthony Hopkins, Jack Nicholson, they're focusing on a transformation, working with certain impulses and imagination and inner and outer movements, and how, for example, if you got, I don't know, if you were in a circumstance where you're in a car accident, what's the psychology behind the person who's there in that moment, experiencing the pain, and then through movement showing that. Moving forward, you've got method that kind of derived now from that Chekhov technique, and the method developed by Lee Strasberg, and in his theater group you've got Meisner and the Meisner technique. There's a bunch that just kind of broke off from that. Robert Lewis, Stella Adler, they all worked with Lee Strasberg, and the foundation of the method is Stanislavski, and that kind of breaks down and trickles down. But this now focuses on characters going through really personal emotions, very personal memories, through a series of exercises and practices that help you activate sense memory and affective memory. And what that means is that, okay, your child in a movie dies. Now, you're not married. You've never had kids, but you have to act this out. How are you going to act out a scene where you're watching your child die? Well, the idea here is that you are accessing a moment where there's a similar emotional response. So, my dog died when I was 5, and that left me tragically devastated. It changed my life. And you go back, and there are a series of exercises that you're taught in order to go back, get into that moment, get into that physical space, and relive that, as traumatic as that sounds. And then in your having gotten there, right? That's the term. Have you gotten there? When you get there, that's where you live. And that's why method actors don't leave that world. They don't leave their character, because once you're in there and you're in that headspace, like, getting out of it requires so much traumatic work and experience to get back into that space. And so most method actors, they'll stay acting in that world, in that space, so that they don't have to go through the journey, the chaos that happens psychologically, because it is chaos, in order to get into that space, that headspace, and become the character that you're portraying. Can you imagine every day having to relive that moment when your dog died, so that as you're falling out of the character and going back into it, you have to relive it. And so that's why you stay there. And you've got some, really famous actors that have come out of this, and with some famous, crazy, wild, amazing performances. The first one that I can think of right off the bat, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Day-Lewis. Have you seen Lincoln?
Yeah. Gangs of New York for me was
that's crazy. Imagine being the butcher, and walking around as the butcher. Yeah.
That for me was a brilliant performance, and it was almost as if he was like. It would send me online to do a Google search and be like, I want to see where this guy lived. Is this guy real?
Four Corners in New York.
This guy.
Research
exactly. That's what it. Almost to that point where I was like, this guy's real. Is this a true story? The performance was that brilliant.
Yeah. You've got James Dean. You've got Robert De Niro, Christian Bale, Heath Ledger. Leonardo DiCaprio, Anne Hathaway. You've got a lot of really great names that come out of that. But you've also got a lot of people that have dealt with a lot of off-screen transition issues, because you have to transition out of that character.
Yeah.
I don't know that the film community is going to necessarily blame method acting as the demise of Heath Ledger. I'm sure there's so much more there that was going on, but
I know that
he entered into a very dangerous headspace to become that Joker character, and that mingled with whatever was going on in his life personally.
I know he was taking
mental
antidepressants.
Health. And all of that. I know. I'm sorry, but you can't separate that. And that experience of getting into that kind of a headspace and then trying to come out of it, and then his tragic, end. It's a very interesting and very unique and very dangerous technique.
Which is something, when you and I are directing a film, we allow our actors to enter into their acting technique, whether it's method, whether it's anything. But one of the things that we make sure that we do at the end of every movie is we enter into a prayer or into a fast for the individual, and are constantly praying for instance, King Herod. That role to be him. Wicked man to attempt to kill the Son of Man. You have to really enter into something, and so one of the things that we make sure that we do with our actors.
We'll talk about that in the next episode, because that's connected to the Christian, the faith-based actor, the Christian actor. Because that's good. That's a huge topic. Yeah. How to be that in a faith-based world. Now that's a good. Oh man, we've got some great content for this week. Yeah. You guys are. I hope you're getting excited as you're listening to this. Yeah. So, all right, now from there you've got the Meisner acting technique, which is a derivative of the method, and it's very, very similar. It's just that there's a specific focus on your scene partner, and and there's a lot of repetition involved in those exercises, and the mirroring. Remember, we used to do a lot of mirror exercises. It's because we were learning the Meisner technique back during some of the early Cast of Faith plays. We'd do mirror exercises to repeat, to mirror the character, mirror the actor, and it's a lot of emphasis on the experience for the audience that they are getting as a result of the back and forth between two characters, two actors, and you've got Alec Baldwin, Tom Cruise, James Franco, and let's move forward. And finally, we'll close with this one: practical aesthetics, acting techniques. This is a very modern technique. It's one that I'm less as aware or informed about, I guess, or expertise on. And so, I'll go through some of my notes. But this was something that David Mamet and William H. Macy created, and based on the teachings of Stanislavski and Sanford Meisner. But it's also based off of the Stoic philosopher Epictetus.
Yeah.
Epictetus. I always say his name wildly incorrectly. And it's 4 basic steps to breaking down a scene. First, you've got the literal, the most basic description of what's happening. Literally, what is happening in this moment? There's a car chase. The guy gets out of the car. He turns around, and the police officers stop, and he starts shooting them all to try and shoot out the tire so he can get away. And it's like basic and literally what's happening. Then the want. Well, what does one character ultimately want the other actor to say or to do? And so at that moment when he gets out, what does he want? What does he want the response to be? He's shooting them out, and what he wants is to antagonize the good guy cop that's chasing him and get away. And so what is the response that he's trying to get out of him in that moment? And then you've got the essential action, what the actor wants within the scene. It's necessary to understand what the character is doing, and what the actor is doing are separate. And so what the character is doing, what the actor are doing is separate things. And so you've got the essential action versus the overall want, what's happening in that moment. And then the as if. As if relates to the essential action to the actor's own life. So what would I have done it, as if it were me? And so it's a way for an actor to have, a more systematic approach to the method.
Yeah.
And
to
a more
philosophize the actual role and be able to ask questions like, well, what's my motivation? What's my desire? It answers questions that will give, like you said, a very systematic, down to point on paper, being like, okay, I have a direction.
Yeah. Felicity Huffman, Jessica Alba, that's where you get those types, But yeah, absolutely right. And from those, we'll talk a little bit more next week about how, you've got these 2, because those are 4 methods, but then you've got, the faith-based philosophy behind it and what we just discussed about, the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of Babylon, right? And how to cross that barrier in order to give a powerful performance. We'll talk about that next week.
Are you ready for your great performance?
Yeah. So we'll end there, but we've got we've got so much more content. I think this is a solid part 1. This will continue in part 2 next week. How do you feel?
I had great. I'm glad to be back.
Is it like riding a bicycle? Were you right back at?
Yeah. A little wobble. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's time for
Creator's Tip of the Week.
Creator's Tip of the Week. You got something? I didn't think. Oh wow, you are prepared.
I'm surprised.
Preparation.
Surprised. I think one of the things that there's so much out there for actors. There are a lot of apps that help you in memory, in scheduling. I got a list of them. I got a whole bunch, but I don't really want to just give you the whole list since we're going to be doing a multiple part series. So, if you haven't heard of these, and I hope you have if you're an actor listening, I'm going to start off with, auditions and casting. I'll start off with trying to find an audition and casting. So we audition.
Are you about to steal my tip of the week without...
No, I didn't even know it. I'm just starting off with those 2 and backstage casting.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Those 2 apps, they're good. They're iPhone apps that allow you in on a tablet. I'm going to just stop at those 2, but, it gives you instant access to rehearsal with partner through the video chat, help you run lines with We Audition, and backstage casting is an easy way to find and apply for casting calls, auditions on the go. But I think another tip, including with casting, is try to do your research on casting directors, because they're willing to put you in the inventory and get you, everything that you need. And they casting directors want people, they want to have faces, they want to have looks, because just a look can get you a role. And I know that happened to us. You don't have to even perform anything. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and it begins with, getting connected with a casting director.
Okay, now my tip of the week, I have two. I'll give you my first one, which is kind of lame, so that's why I decided to do a second one. But my first one is, me personally, one of my biggest fears, I have this like reoccurring dream or reoccurring nightmare where I'm on stage, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do next. It's not that I don't know my lines, I just don't know the story and I don't know the scene, and I'm giving these lines, but I don't have a motivation behind it, and therefore I try to come up with my own lines, and then I forget my old. It's like a weird nightmare.
But anyway, someone out there just interpreted your dream.
So something that I would do when I was, in college is I would record my lines, but I would perform them. I wouldn't just read them. I'd do it two different ways. Mm-hmm. I would try and do it without any emotion and just read it and let that play over and over and over and over and over again. And I'd listen to it at night, and I'd let it play while I'm sleeping, because I thought that, subconsciously, that through osmosis they would get into my brain.
Yeah.
And I would, play them loud, but, back in the day, I'm dating myself. We could do tape recording, or we could do. I used to just record it on a DVD. On a CD. So I'd pop it into my computer. I'd record my voice, play it on a CD, and then play my CD player with headphones on and whatnot. Now you've so many apps. Getting a solid voice recording app and practicing your performances into a voice recording act, and then stopping to listen to yourself, but actually just listen. Mm-hmm. And as you're listening, see the scene, act it out. And so now you let the words, you don't have to worry about the words, just listen to the words that are coming back, and then try to start blocking. Are you grabbing things? How are you interacting with the environment? Are you picturing the environment as it's scripted, and the hand props that are involved, the set props that are there? How are you interacting and engaging them, and just letting the scene play out? And if you don't have to do the work of the voice work and the line memorization, and you're letting that play back and you're seeing it in your mind, it's a great tool that I always suggest actors to use in order for them to get into not just the line memorization. That's step one. Memorize those lines. Get off book right away, because the sooner that you're off book, the quicker you're able to start working on character choices and decisions and motivations and getting in that headspace. But also understanding the blocking and coming, because I as a director, I love blocking being a collaborative process. I have my blocking. It's not that I'm letting the actor come in and just make up the where they feel like they're going, because the blocking is something that has been determined with the DP. We've gone through with the script supervisor, we've gone through the script with the writer, and we've determined that the way to tell the story is by getting the camera from point A to point B, and the actor needs to be here, here, here. But something that I love doing is hearing from the actor, as they're moving through the space that they've lived in, because it's now their space, their motivation behind the choices that they're making. And I'll ask them that. It's like, well, what's your motivation for that?
Cool. Yeah.
And if they've done that work, that's one way of living in the space, by listening to the lines being played back to you as they're acted, and you living in that space. And so, you know what? We'll cut it there. That'll be my tip of the week for the first one. Get yourself a great voice recorder app.
Even the app that comes standard to the iPhone,
But there's some that allows you to do some editing too, if you want to cut, and you can even cut your performance, and and you can add your scene partner's voice to it as well. Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff out there. So anyway, that's it.
Try We Audition. That might be the one.
Ooh, there you go. You just inserted yours into mine.
I put mine back inside.
All right, cool. That is it for episode 26. If you have any questions at all, you can reach me at xgarcia on Twitter, and you can reach me there. And
at Jonathan Harvest at Twitter.
That's right. And if you have any questions at all that you want to hear answered, whether in an episode or directly to you, doesn't matter. We're not going to put you on the spot. Ask those questions right away at info@MountHarvest.com or MountHarvest@gmail.com, and you can reach us that way, and we'd be more than happy to answer and entertain any thoughts, comments, concerns, ideas that you may have. Thank you so much for watching The Harvest.
Yeah, yes. And I don't know what I said before. I might have to repeat one of these,
I don't know, go ahead.
Press.
That subscribe button. We've done press.
Yeah, we have.
How about elbow it, since we're in COVID times,
Oh yeah, you got to bump it. Bump the subscribe button. Yes, please like and share.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Join us at thepatreon.com/The Harvest Podcast for some BTS footage of our cinema production life.